All right, episode 3 of Live from the Lincoln Desk. Thank you so much for being with us. As we've got people jumping on and joining us, got a few topics that I'm going to cover. Meanwhile, feel free to jump into the chat. Let me know topics you want to cover this week. I keep an eye on this chat in YouTube. So jump into that chat and put in any thoughts you have, even as I'm going through topics. I'll try to get better at this of looking at it before I close out a topic. That way we're having more of a discussion here versus a question and answer. But we're figuring this out. It's episode 3, so we'll get there. It's part of why we started this early. We know that it's, August 4th as I record this, as we do this live. And obviously some people, actually most people, watch these afterwards right now. But we know it's early. People are going back to school. Vacations are still finishing up. I feel it as I'm making calls and going to events and people saying, call me in 3 weeks once kids are back to school and then I'll be ready to go. So I understand that, but we're trying to get all the kinks worked out. We're figuring out our electronics and our hardware, getting you all used to Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock becoming a thing. So there's some effort that goes into it before the real stretch. Labor Day through Election Day, that final 2 months, that is really the final stretch of the campaign. That's when voters pay attention. So we know before then, the vast majority of people are going to watch these things afterwards. For those of you who are with us when we do it, thank you for being here. I look forward to answering your questions and interacting with you. That'll be more of a thing again, post-Labor Day. As the public starts to engage and starts to have questions, these things are going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with everyday voters. You've got other candidates who are out there who are doing town halls and trying to get out there and talk to voters, but if you look, it's a whole bunch of supporters. The room is full of Republicans or full of Democrats, and that's it. That's all they're reaching. If you want to actually persuade people, you've got to reach beyond your base and actually reach to people who aren't fully engaged in the electoral process, which is the whole point of our campaign. So that's why we're out talking to voters. That's why we're doing creative things in our social media. You don't always see it. There's a whole lot of work going on different platforms, on texting and talking to voters and doing small, intimate get-togethers with people and their networks. All that is going on as we share our message and engage with voters. I can't wait to see just how much it's going to be a sprint in the final 2 months as we all just race to try to keep up. But in the meantime, we're going to lay the groundwork with things like this. It's important that my positions are out there to the public. And so as people search for information on the candidates, they're going to have things that I've put out there over the course of these couple months as we prep for the final stretch. So thank you all for being with us. Seems like everybody is tired today. Everyone I've talked to, my poor wife, had some health troubles last night, so she didn't get a lot of sleep. Talked to a lot of my team, and they're all exhausted today. I don't know what it is. It's a Tuesday in August. So if you're tired, it seems to be just that's kind of the thing right now. If I wasn't doing this, not just the live, but the campaign, I'd have ESPN up on my TV watching the World Series of Poker main event final table. We've got today and tomorrow the final 7 players to try to get that $10 million prize. I never really have time anymore to watch poker. I never have time to play poker, but it is fun sometimes when you get to that main event to watch it. So if you're in the watching this and you're in the chat, jump in there and let me know if that's something you enjoy. And if not, that's certainly okay. As I mentioned when putting out information for this live, I'm going to rant on a topic before we get going to the questions. I see, Michelle, we've already got a question from you. I promise I will answer it. Anyone else who has questions, jump in the chat and I'll be happy to answer it. But first, we've got to talk about sales taxes in Illinois. Because August 1st, J.B. Pritzker raises all of our sales taxes. If you live in the Cook County or Collier County region, your sales taxes went up 1/4 point on everything, mind you. There's no carve out here for over-the-counter medicines, for groceries. None of that is carved out. That's all included in the RTA tax. So J.B. Pritzker raised our taxes 1/4 point and our sales taxes on everything we buy. And then 2 days later, August 3rd, he wants us to give him credit for a temporary 10-day reduction in the state sales tax for select back-to-school items. This is the craziness of Illinois, that our governor could, with a straight face, talk about how he is saving working families money when 2 days prior, he had put in place a permanent increase in our sales tax. He says it with a straight face. Very rarely is he even questioned on it by the media. So he gets away with it. It's part of why I'm running. He can't get away with this kind of thing anymore. Let's talk about the sales tax in Illinois, because there are so many things that frustrate me about this whole situation and just our sales tax structure in general. First of all, this back to school holiday. It doesn't cover all back to school items. It doesn't cover instructional items. It doesn't cover art supplies. It doesn't cover computer supplies and computers and electronics. So it doesn't cover all back to school items. In fact, the list of items that it doesn't cover seems to be twice as long as the list of items that it does actually cover. The second thing is this isn't a full sales tax holiday. It's a 5% reduction. That's how the Illinois Department I'm blanking on the name of the department, so it'll come to me in a second, but that's how Illinois describes it. And yet J.B. Pritzker says that it's a full sales tax holiday, that he's making sure there's no state tax. Now, here's how he gets away with that, okay? He gets away with it, by the way, Department of Revenue. It came to me. Anyways, he gets away with that because he's an incredibly skilled lawyer and liar. He knows how to word things, so it's not technically a lie. See, it's the state portion of the state tax that he has agreed to give us off for that 10-day period. The state taxes us at 6.25%. 5% of that goes to the state. 1.25% of that goes to counties and municipalities. So when he words it just a certain way, it is true that the state portion of the state sales tax, we're not paying that on certain educational supplies, back to school supplies for this 10-day period. But you're still paying a state tax, a state sales tax. So the wording here is key. And I don't think, I gave him some grief on this today. Of course, Capital Facts went after me because they have to defend Pritzker. But I don't think the way he worded that, and it was a staffer, I get it. But I don't think the way he worded that was accurate, because he didn't say the state portion of the state tax. He just said the state tax. So I think even though Pritzker is usually very good at parsing his words so he isn't technically lying, I think he was full on lying in that social media post. Again, it was a staffer, but it was done under Pritzker's name. That said, you are still paying sales taxes on everything you buy. Number one, you've got county tax, you've got RTA tax, you've got local tax, all sales taxes that you're still paying during the sales tax holiday. So you're getting about half of your tax off depending on where you live. And again, just for a 10-day period. So that's the first thing. The second thing that drives me crazy is what we tax in Illinois. You are taxed a sales tax on over-the-counter medicines, on medical supplies. You are taxed a sales tax on all sorts of necessary hygiene products, household products, things that working families, especially low-income working families, this takes up a significant part of your budget, and we pay a sales tax on all of that year-round. And by the way, I mentioned that RTA tax, it applies to everything. And so even when Pritzker eliminated the grocery tax, we're still paying the RTA tax on our groceries and medicines and formulas and everything else. This is the craziness of our tax system in Illinois and just how regressive it is. By the way, it gets worse. You talk about the gas tax. Well, see, J.B. Pritzker, the gas tax that he's put on our gas, which he has tripled, roughly, almost tripled. I think by the end of the year or by next year, it'll be officially triple since he took office, or at least close. We pay a sales tax on top of that gas tax. So you're double taxed on your gas. Illinois is one of only a few states that does that in the whole country. Again, a way that our sales taxes are incredibly regressive in this state. So what I want to do, what my running mate Carolyn and I have talked about for a long time, even before running in this race, we have talked about the fact that we have got to modernize our tax structure. This is something that politicians have not pushed forward. You see this from policy shops and policy organizations who have pushed for this. And these are center-right and center-left policy shops. All agree that this needs to be done. So why has no politician done it? Because it is incredibly risky. Just like all the other challenges that Illinois faces, the big challenges that we need serious solutions for, these are things that you don't see politicians talking about or pursuing because they are fraught with danger for a politician. When you say modernize the sales tax, my plan, Carolyn's plan, which you're going to see come out very soon, has that part of an overall structure that shifts the burden from our property taxes and from regressive taxes to more use taxes. We're not talking about raising your taxes. We're talking about modernizing our entire tax system. But when anybody talks about modernize the sales tax, there is a part of that will then impose a sales tax on non-essential services. And so someone who wants to do you harm politically will say the following: they want to raise taxes. They want to put taxes on services. See, it's very easy to use the negative side of this, and every politician is afraid of that. I'm not. You want to use this against me politically for the rest of my life, so be it. I don't care. We need to actually solve the problems in Illinois instead of being so afraid that somebody might twist your words and throw it in a TV ad and make you look bad. This is why nothing gets fixed in Illinois. Exactly this. It's always politics that trumps good policy. We've got to actually have bold leaders who are willing to do the right thing, even if politically it could be spun against them. And the right thing when it comes to our sales tax is modernizing that sales tax structure. Here's the good part of that. The good part of that is we can lower the overall rate to help working families. The other good part of this is when we modernize, I'm going to push to have certain things completely removed from our sales tax structure. That means we're no longer going to pay sales tax on groceries. I know Pritzker eliminated the sales tax on groceries. Don't get me started on it. We're going to find a way to make municipalities whole so we can eliminate that grocery tax entirely because it is incredibly regressive. Working families shouldn't be paying taxes on groceries. You know what else working families shouldn't be paying taxes on? Medicines, on medical supplies. If you're not paying it on groceries, that means you're also not paying it on formula. I don't want them paying it on diapers. There's a whole number of things that we can go through that are going to be in our plan that working families shouldn't be paying sales taxes on. And so if you modernize the system, because you are going to bring in more revenue from what I'm about to say, that opens up the possibility to reduce the sales tax on some key areas. Where the sales tax then gets imposed where it's currently not is on some services. Non-essential services, ideally more high-end, but it's going to hit all of us. We're all going to pay some more in the sales tax on services. I want to do it in a revenue-neutral way, so we're paying less in property taxes and ideally overall paying less in sales taxes, but that may not be possible right away. See, this is how we make sure we shift the tax burden from those more regressive places. This is how we actually finally reduce property taxes, because that is a massive problem for working families, but you can't do it with magic money. Darren Bailey's putting out texts right now to the suburbs and Chicago, which, I mean, I try not to be a pundit. I'm no longer a political strategist. I'm a candidate, but let me be a political strategist for like 7 seconds. The text is awful. It does not play in the suburbs. It's talking about Doge and all sorts of red meat, super, super conservative stuff that doesn't play in the suburbs. I can't tell you how many people have forwarded me the text and said, is this really what he's saying in Chicago in the suburbs? And he's sending it not to hard R's. He's sending it to swing voters. So, sorry, back to being a candidate. But as part of what he puts out, it's, look, I'm going to snap my fingers and magically your property taxes are going to go down. Does anybody believe that's actually going to happen? Because it's not. If you believe this, then I got a bridge to sell you, because it's not going to happen. You have to actually replace that revenue with something else. Now, some efficiencies are possible. Absolutely possible. This is a state that spends too much money. There absolutely are efficiencies to be found. But guess what? Anyone who tells you that that alone is going to solve the property tax challenge, they're lying to you, because the efficiencies that you find are going to have a nominal impact on the overall tax burden in this state. Just telling you the data. I'm literally just giving you the numbers. Anyone else who tells you differently is lying. If you want to address the property tax challenges in this state, you're going to have to shift those expenditures, that burden, to something else. All right, that's where a lot of municipalities have done this, where they've worked, if they're home rule, they've worked to shift it from property taxes to sales tax, because sales tax is more of a consumption tax. Plus, sales taxes are paid by people not just in your municipality or in this state, in your state. We have out-of-state people who are coming to Illinois, who are spending money at our conferences and our sporting events, and they're tourists and they're traveling the state, and we need more of that. And you see, when they come here and they pay the sales tax, that could help lower the tax burden for actual residents. There's a reason why it makes a lot of sense to work to shift that tax burden to sales taxes over, let's say, property taxes on our residents. All right, this is a smart policy that's going to take time. It's going to take years, and it's going to take people who are willing to think differently. Not somebody like J.B. Pritzker, who's just going to give you a 10-day sales tax holiday, which frankly, to me, is disrespectful to people. It's a slap in the face, I believe. What did we say in our press release? Let me see if I can find it because I thought it was a really good line. I wrote it, but of course I've written a lot of things the last couple of months. Here we go. I love this line, so let me use it here. Illinois working families need real relief, not political theater. They don't just feel the squeeze when buying notebooks and crayons the first week of August. They feel it every single day when paying among the highest sales taxes in the nation. I think we said somewhere else. Here we go. Insulting to taxpayers. Giving families a temporary 5% break for 10 days while maintaining an outdated system for the other 355 days is insulting to taxpayers. I truly believe that. So J.B. Pritzker's out there getting all this positive press. He was in my backyard at a location 1.5 miles from my house. And getting all this positive press for this 10-day reprieve on some of the items that you buy for back to school. Meanwhile, we've got an incredibly regressive tax system that taxes our teachers on school supplies year-round because apparently instructional supplies didn't make the cut this time. We've got working families buying diapers and formula and over-the-counter medicine who are paying sales taxes on those items. Let's do something about that, Governor, instead of just patting yourself on the back for what is a Band-Aid. I'm all for saving working families money, so I appreciate the Band-Aid, but I think it only serves to point out how broken the system is and how much we actually need to fix the overall problem instead of just these Band-Aid solutions. All right, that's my rant on property taxes. Let me jump back over to the chat. I know we've had a few people have some questions here. I do not think that for those 10 days that this estate one will be automatically adjusted. Brookdale, pop in the chat there. I'm not following what you're saying, and I'd love to know you're pretty thoughtful on this stuff. So explain, if you don't mind, your thoughts. I'm going to go to Michelle's question while you're doing that. Michelle, what's your opinion on the death penalty? Thank you for asking. I think you asked this last week, and I realized at the end that I never got to the question. So thank you for bringing it again, and I'm happy to answer it. We've got some people who are supporters of my opponents who usually come in and ask their controversial questions thinking, ooh, we're going to get them. See, the nice thing about being mainstream is your positions are mainstream, so you never really have to be worried about sharing those positions. It's kind of nice. So ask your controversial questions. I don't care because my positions on them are mainstream. My opinion on the death penalty is we've seen way too often that the state has gotten their death penalty sentences wrong, that you've seen people who were on death row who should not have been there. And even if it happens only once, if we put one person to death who should not have been put to death for their crimes because of a mistake, listen, everybody's human. And I know our state's attorneys are doing the best they can. Our attorney general and everybody else, they're all doing the best they can. Our prosecutors, they're all doing the best they can. Our judges, they're doing the best they can, but they're also still human. And so when you have a system run by humans, it becomes fraught with danger when you allow for that end result to be the death of a person. And so I do not support reinstating the death penalty. There are some cases where I'm open to the conversation. There certainly are some incredibly egregious situations. And I know sometimes those bills are brought up in Springfield where somebody says, well, what about X? When that X is something that's absolutely horrid, I guess I could be open to having the conversation. I still do lean against it. But I do understand when you've got somebody who is just the absolute scum of society and you can prove their guilt without a shadow of a doubt. Maybe it's worth having that conversation. But again, I'm pro-life at every stage. And so to me, we're talking about ending somebody's life, even somebody who's made mistakes, who's done horrible things. We've seen people who are in prison, in jail, who have turned their lives around, who become, even if in a life sentence where they're never going to see the light of day, they're never going to get out of prison, but they still do find the light, if you will. And I think giving people that chance, giving that people that opportunity is the right thing to do. So I appreciate the question. If you disagree with me, certainly you have a right. Jump in with your thoughts. Jump in if you disagree, and I welcome that, Michelle or anybody else. Sales tax return monthly. The people selling the products may not have a system to update to note the sales tax on the item. At Brookdale, that is something that kind of frustrates me. Is you see these policymakers who make decisions at the state level. We're seeing this right now with the no swipe fees and the challenges that creates, where they pass a bill. Hey, look, we're going to save you a bunch of money. And then they say, here, you guys just all figure this out. Whether it's retailers, in this case, just figure it out. And from what I've heard from people on both sides of the debate, like with the no swipe fees and when it comes to credit card fees, which is still a giant battle going on in Illinois. It got pushed back, got delayed a year, but still is a battle that's going on. The people who are proponents of those laws genuinely believe that the marketplace, that the credit card companies, the retailers can literally just do a quick software update and all of that changes. I've done my research on this because I'm all for any chance we have to save working families money. So I've asked them point blank, is this true? To people that are going to tell me the truth, off the record. Of course, now I'm going to say what they said on the record. So whatever, maybe they won't trust me as much in the future. But I've asked them point blank, is that true? Because it's kind of BS if you could just push forward a software update that would change how credit card swipes are processed, and that solves the whole problem here. And now people could save more money. Seriously, could we? Working families are really struggling right now. And in multiple people I've talked to, both in the tech industry and banking and credit card companies, have said it is nowhere near that easy, that the laws governing, and maybe I'm going to get an expert on one of my podcasts to talk through it, because I'm not near smart enough to talk about this like the experts, but the laws that govern this, the systems that govern this are incredibly complicated. It isn't just a software patch. And so a lot more goes into it. I'm not saying that's not a reason to do it, but I think our policymakers need to recognize that you can't just sign a bill if you're J.B. Pritzker. You can't just pass a law down in Springfield, snap your fingers, and then magically it all gets implemented. Even people on the left, like the blogger Cat Fax, who went after me today, even he has said, Rich on that blog has said that Springfield too often does that. Pass a bill and just say, here, whatever, figure it out, and don't focus on implementation. It is a common frustration and a kind of common problem in Illinois. I do think, Brookdale, that there is the ability for that to be done after the fact if necessary, but that gets really messy. If somebody needs to do a refund or what have you, that gets super messy. But it is built in for most of these retailers, but for a small mom and pop shop who maybe is doing things the best they can with limited technology, you're probably right that this is something that makes it pretty difficult for them. So that's a strong point. Mark, how is it down here with us common folk? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of what we're doing. Working families are struggling in Illinois, and our policymakers don't spend enough time thinking about how to help working families. It's one of the reasons why I became an independent. It's one of the main reasons why I'm running for governor as an independent. And it's one of the reasons why we're launching and building an independent movement in Illinois. For way too long, the focus has been on politics and political games and not on what can we do to actually help the working families of Illinois. And so if you go to my social media, you're going to see a lot about policy. Yeah, I know that doesn't get as many likes. I know that it's supposed to be 3 sentences or 4 sentences to get you to like it, or 5 seconds for a short to get you to like it. But that doesn't solve any of our problems. We need to actually engage and dive into this stuff and try to fix it if we're going to make people's lives better. So that's my commitment to you, and that's what I'm going to keep doing in this campaign and well beyond November. All right, Team Cottingham, how's it going? What are your thoughts on increasing the personal income tax exemption here in Illinois? It's currently under $3,000. Increasing it would help poor, working, and middle-class residents. I love this idea. So let me encapsulate your point here. We, right now, have the ability to help lower-income families, working families. There are people who will tell you, no, we need to change our constitution in this state to do it. But actually, we don't. Those are the people who want the progressive tax in Illinois, and it's mostly because they want the ability to determine different taxes at specific levels so that each year they could just say, oh, we only raise taxes on this small group over here or this group over there. We got a trust issue right now with Springfield. You give them that power. I don't trust they're not going to abuse that power. But what we do have the ability to do right now, without any sort of constitutional amendment, is we have the ability to help working families by addressing the personal income tax exemption. You can do that now. Springfield could do it right now by raising that exemption. And that helps everyone in Illinois, but especially working families, because those are the ones who rely on that exemption more than anybody else. As you get to middle income, and especially upper middle income and higher income, those are individuals who have accountants who are able to work out their taxes, where they have things. See, when I do this at 7 o'clock, my brain blanks, but where they're able to, what's the word? You know the word I'm searching for? I'm looking at my producer. Can't think of it. Whatever. Anyways, those are people who are able to file their taxes. Maybe somebody here in the chat could help me out, because this is really killing me. Hold on. All right, hold on. I gotta, when you, I'm sorry, I like Jason Plummer, so forgive me. I don't mean to attack Jason. He's a great elected official now. He's grown up, but I'm having my Plummer moment where I can't think of the word, and I'm unwilling to give it up. Itemize. See, I knew I would get there. Anyways, sorry. There was my, someone will clip that. I know I'll look like an idiot, but whatever. I'm being real with you. That's why we're doing these lives. Upper income individuals, upper middle income individuals, they will itemize their taxes. And so oftentimes they're not relying on the standard deduction federally or some of your exemptions at the state level. Whereas when you're looking at lower income to middle income folks in the state, they're relying on that more. It's also a larger percentage of their income. And so we can help a lot of people right now by looking at the earned income tax credit, by looking at the personal income exemption. Thank you, Brookdale. You got that for me. You got itemized. And so these are absolutely the ways that we can help lower income families. And it's something I very much want to do. When you look at the personal exemption in Illinois, two things come to mind. Number one is it significantly trails the standard deduction at the federal level. And this is something that drives me crazy. You've got a state like Illinois that claims to care about working families. And yet when you file your state taxes, you are getting way fewer deductions and exemptions at the state level than you ever get at the federal level. And so the percentage of your income that becomes taxable is so much more at the state level in Illinois than it ever is in your federal taxes. This is something we absolutely need to address, because you are shifting that tax burden now to lower income families, to working families. And it's part of the reason why working families are struggling so much in Illinois. The second thing I want to point out is that J.B. Pritzker and his majority party in Springfield, they're the ones that paused the personal exemption when it became troublesome for them to balance the budget. That was not something that was done by independents or done by Republicans even. That was done by J.B. Pritzker and the party that claims to be supporting working families in this state. Now, they did make up for it in future years. We caught up to what's supposed to be the escalator based on every year and how the amount is supposed to go up to keep pace with CPI. But they froze it for a year, and even in future years, they tried to freeze it. J.B. Pritzker in multiple years has tried to freeze that personal income tax exemption. He's only succeeded one time, but this is not a one-time thing for J.B. Pritzker. So my challenge to the governor is, how do you say you're for working families and you want to make life more affordable for working families when you're trying to freeze the personal income tax exemption, which is already too low in Illinois, when you're raising people's sales taxes, when you're supporting a deal that raises people's tolls when they're just trying to get to work? How can you say you're for working families when you keep making it more expensive to live in the state of Illinois, to work in the state of Illinois? You're not for working families. You claim to be. But if you actually were for working families, you would do things like increase the personal income tax exemption, which from Team Cottingham, I think is an excellent idea. So let's look at actually helping working families in Illinois instead of constantly making it more and more expensive to be in the state. Many of you know I've owned a polling company for years. I took a leave of absence for this run, but I have seen thousands and thousands of polls in my life. And one of the polls that I love to see every quarter that my company at the time would do would be to ask the voters in Illinois, the residents in Illinois, do you believe it's affordable or expensive to live in this state? Let me bring up the latest numbers. I only have, I think it was Q1 that I would have before I took a leave of absence. So I wouldn't have numbers, the latest numbers. I'd have to ask if they've got those latest numbers. But I want to pull up, it's going to take me a second, so bear with me. But I want to pull up for us what the last numbers were. So just give me a second here. I have to even remember where the heck that would be, so bear with me. I think it's in this. I think it's here. Okay. Yes, I found it. Look at that. I'm the greatest. All right. All right, here we go. So from January, I was right. So in that poll, is it affordable or expensive? Too expensive, or is it affordable to live in the state of Illinois? 21% said it was affordable. 57% said it was too expensive. Let me say that again. When asked in the latest poll numbers that I have, is it affordable or too expensive to live in the state of Illinois? Only 21% said that it's affordable, and a whopping 57% said it was too expensive to live in Illinois. Let's look at the strong responses. For those who said it was very affordable, only 8%. For those who said it was very expensive, 34%. And I love looking at the splits. So let's jump over to ideology, because what will often happen in polling is if you've got a blue state, red respondents will always say everything's bad because they're not in power and they want to beat the party that's in power. If you've got a red state, blue respondents will always say that everything's bad. So the first thing I would look at in a poll like this is, okay, what's the difference between, let's say, a conservative's response on that question versus somebody who's moderate or liberal? So let's look at that. Conservatives say it's affordable. 13% said it's affordable. Moderates, asking how many of those say it's affordable to live in Illinois? 21%. I'm doing the math on the fly here, bear with me. Liberals, 34%. Now let's look at too expensive. Let's just look at the liberal number who say it's too expensive, 43%. So even in blue Illinois, voting for majority Democratic candidates or more liberal candidates, still by a 10% margin, they still believe that it's unaffordable to live in Illinois. This is something that crosses all parties, all ideologies, that it is too expensive to live in this state. And so in J.B. Pritzker's Illinois, even liberal voters by a 43 to 33% margin admit it's too expensive to live in Illinois. Let me quickly pull up Democrats, because that would be pretty important to note as well. So Democrats, let's do the math. Well, how do they feel about the state of Illinois and how affordable or expensive it is? 31% of Democrats say that it's affordable. 48% say it's too expensive. So let me start over. In J.B. Pritzker's Illinois, even Democrats by a 48 to 31% margin say it's too expensive in this state. So maybe J.B. Pritzker should get on that and stop making our lives more expensive while saying that he's lowering our cost of living, because clearly the voters don't agree. Independents, let's check those numbers just for fun, then I'll finally get to the next question. But I don't get to look at polls while I'm doing this run. So I'm kind of nerding out a bit, because this is what I would do back before I had run, is look at data, look at polls. All right, 20% of independents say that it's affordable to live in Illinois. 55% of independents say it's too expensive. So when we talk about this independent movement that we're building, and people ask, what's your path to victory on this? This is my path to victory. People don't understand how frustrated moderates are in Illinois, how frustrated independents are in Illinois. By a 55% to 20% margin in this state, independents say it is too damn expensive to live in Illinois. That is our opening. That's why we're building this movement, because these are voters who are incredibly frustrated. They are reticent to support the governor, but they're also disinclined to support Darren Bailey and the Republicans in the party of Donald Trump in Illinois, especially throughout the suburbs. That is our gigantic lane as an independent candidate for governor and for our long-term independent movement. All right, let me pop back and look to the chat here. Jay Lopez, the Democrats will blame President Trump. Yeah, they will. And I'll tell you that so will I, to a degree. I know I've taken some flack for this from supporters that I have. I've got supporters left of center, I've got supporters right of center, and I've got supporters in the center. And whenever I say stuff like what I'm about to say, I get those right of center supporters who say, bah, you're going to lose. How dare you go after the president? But facts are facts. And that is what has driven everything that I do in this run and in this movement. When the president does something right, I'm going to support him and have his back. And when he does something wrong, I'm going to oppose him. I am hopeful that the president's going to bring peace to the Middle East, for instance. And I saw that there's some deal in the works potentially to disarm Hamas. I don't do foreign policy, so I don't know a ton about it. I'm dubious because there's been a lot of things said about this war in Iran. But if that was an outcome here that could be achieved, I would give President Trump so much praise for that, because that would be huge for peace in the Middle East and across the entire continent. So when the president does things right, I will support him. But when he does things wrong, I'm going to point that out. And when it comes to the economy, we're not getting President Trump from term one. We're getting whatever this president is, where there were a lot of people who voted for them because they remembered fondly the economy from his first term. And frankly, President Trump did do a very good job on the economy during his first term. I don't know what the heck this is in his second term. I don't know what he's doing, what he's thinking. He's not taking affordability seriously. Neither is the staff at the White House, from what I've been told. And working families are hurting. And I was told that from some of my people who are in that orbit, they've said we're making necessary structural changes that will benefit in the long term. So I'll be fair and say that that's their response, that it's short-term pain for long-term gain. But that admits that there is short-term pain. I certainly hope for long-term gain. I want things to get better for working families. I want things to get more affordable. So if Trump and his staff is right that these are things we have to do and things will get way better in 2 or 4 years because of what they've done now, then I will admit that at that time. Again, dubious right now, but I will always admit when I'm wrong. But their position, even they admit that there is short-term pain. Whether it's gas prices going up because of the war in Iran, which gas prices lead to everything else becoming more expensive. We were finally seeing gas prices go down, which much of the gas price increase was done under Biden. Trump came in, and actually one of the few areas that he was able to see pretty quick results was that gas prices were going down, even though inflation in many other areas was holding steady. That, I believe, due to tariffs and other things that I think were not smart economic policies. But then the war in Iran, those gas prices shot up. So there's so many pain points right now for working families. And to Jay Lopez, this is why, as you say, Democrats can blame President Trump. This is why, I'll be honest, I've seen a zillion polls, voters blame President Trump. It isn't Democrats. It isn't Democrat politicians or progressive voters. I'm telling you, independents, moderates, even many Republicans right now are blaming President Trump. As a matter of fact, throughout the suburbs, there are a whole bunch of disaffected Republicans who they're disaffected because of the economy. They voted for Trump because of what they thought he'd do for the economy, and they're saying right now that they're not seeing that benefit. Wall Street's doing decently well. As a matter of fact, Wall Street's doing great. But for all the rest of us on Main Street, we're not feeling those benefits. And Election Day is coming soon. So while you say that Democrats are going to blame Trump, right now, we're headed towards an election where voters are going to blame President Trump, and they're going to blame President Trump's party. And the more that you stick your head in the sand on that, the more that you're not going to have an electoral outcome in November that you're going to like. But not my circus, not my monkeys. It ain't my problem anymore. All right. Who else has any questions they want to cover? Any comments? Okay, hold on. You guys are working in the chat. Feel free to put stuff in if you've got stuff. But I had something come through via email the first week we did this. And then they said it again second week because I never got to it. And they actually didn't send it this week because I think they gave up. So let me finally actually answer that question, because it's not something that I've talked about on these lives or really publicly anywhere, because I don't want to sort of get into the trolls and how they're going back and forth and attacking and saying crazy things. But I've been asked straight up, am I being paid by J.B. Pritzker? Have I been paid off in some way? Has there been some exchange of money, some promise of money or positions or future benefits? I'm trying to be as broad with this as possible so you don't think I'm lawyering the question. Is there any sort of benefit that I'm expecting from Pritzker or anybody left of center for this? Is that a broad enough way to word this that catches any possible answer? Here's my emphatic answer to this crazy attack from Darren Bailey supporters that I'm somehow being paid off by J.B. Pritzker. How dare you when your candidate is the one who has been paid off by J.B. Pritzker? Darren Bailey is the one who has a gigantic following in Illinois because of $23 million spent by J.B. Pritzker to create Darren Bailey in the first place. So you're going to come at me and lob an accusation based on the fact that your candidate is the one who has seen that direct, proven financial benefit from J.B. Pritzker. Get out of here. That's all I've got to say to that. Of course, I'll answer the question so no one thinks that I'm dodging it. No, absolutely no promises have been made. Nothing has been hinted at. I'm not angling for anything. I have zero goals here to parlay this into, now am I going to get some sort of position? Or maybe now I can join the Democrats and they'll be nice to me. Trust me, I was at an event last week that was full of almost all Democrats, and they weren't very nice to me because they're supporting J.B. Pritzker. But they do like the fact that maybe at some point here soon, we could actually get some balance in Illinois, because I've heard over and over and over from Democrats who are either in elected office or just Democrat voters who have said they actually do want me to succeed because they recognize that a one-party system does not work and that there needs to be some semblance of balance in Illinois. And since Republicans have failed to produce that balance, since the candidate Republicans have put forward is completely unelectable and will not achieve that, they're hopeful that maybe this movement that we're building could bring that balance, that check and balance, that it wouldn't be a two-party system at that point because we're not a party, but you get the idea that there's at least some back and forth, and we could talk about different ideas instead of it just being all from one party and in many cases one wing of one party. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And not only have I not gotten some sort of financial benefit or payoff for future promises, the exact opposite is true. Both sides have gone after me. Both sides have gone after my family. Both sides have gone after my former company. If you think that J.B. Pritzker would have picked me to be the candidate that he wants to run, his staff has told people back when we were doing SFR, our podcast, that they would watch it so they could see what Republicans ought to be saying, because I was one of the most effective and consistent attackers against J.B. Pritzker. Do you really think I would be the one that they would want to pay to be in this race? They would go find it's the same playbook they did in the past. They'd find some union-friendly, controllable, not to say that I've been avidly pro-union, but you know what I mean? Someone who comes from their ranks, who would do everything that they tell them. They wouldn't pick me, of all people. So the idea is completely ridiculous. But again, I'll reiterate, this is an attack that's only coming from Darren Bailey supporters. And Darren Bailey was created by J.B. Pritzker's tens of millions of dollars. So maybe get off your hypocritical high horse here, because you do not have a leg to stand on this one. So I finally answered your question, the person who asked that, who it was weeks ago, so now I forgot even who their name was. All right, let's see here. What else? Jay Lopez, can you explain what it is you want me to cover there in your question? Meanwhile, I want to go over to my socials, because I had somebody ask a question on X. They wanted me to talk about energy. So let's jump over to that. We've got about 15 minutes left on the live. So anything else you guys want us to cover, feel free to jump in. But there was an editorial board article from the Tribune this morning, which was something I've covered a lot. And so let's jump into it, because it's talking about energy. We're going to talk a lot about energy in the coming weeks, a lot about energy in the coming weeks during this campaign. But now's a great time to address this, because something people don't realize about the energy problem and the affordability problem in Illinois is that there are decisions being made, or in some cases not being made, that could help lower your energy bills right now. One of the things that should be done, and the Tribune has done a good job of pointing this out, is that under these laws that have been passed, mostly CEJA, but going back to even FEJA and some of the other bills that have been passed, we are closing natural gas plants faster than the market can handle, faster than the grid can handle. Now, we need to get faster at putting clean energy sources onto the grid. I think that there are people who have a valid beef on that especially in PJM, the territory that we're not quick enough to get these clean energy sources onto the grid. So that I would agree with. That said, while these sources are taking too long to get on the grid, and while data centers and other technologies are requiring more and more energy, we are actively closing natural gas plants, especially because of laws that have been passed that Springfield is unwilling to do anything about. Now, to be fair, just in this last bill that was passed, they did give the state authority to slow down or even stop those closures for natural gas plants, but nothing's been done with that authority. And what people don't realize is that these decisions from power plants are made years and years and years in advance. There was just an auction for PJM that's for energy that will be delivered over 2 years from now. And they're making those decisions today. When you talk about natural gas plants, a lot of these plants have already been winding down. Some of them have already closed because 2030 is coming fast. 2045 even is coming fast. So they've got to make decisions on where they can be profitable. And when they don't see relief coming from the state, when they don't see anyone from the state saying, hey, we're going to push this back to 2035 or 2038 or 2040 so we can have a bit of a softer landing ground when we transition to our green energy future, they have to close. Because again, they're bidding on energy markets in 2039 now. So you say, hey, or 2029 now. So you say, hey, we're going to, maybe in a year or two, we'll say, hey, yeah, you don't need to close by 2030 because we've got time. You don't have time. The energy market is incredibly complicated. It's why I always lose people when I jump into it, because even I only understand it a little bit, and yet I lose people when I dive into detail. But it's incredibly complicated, and it is incredibly regulated and controlled, and decisions are made years and years in advance. And so the trib is right here. They dive into, I encourage you to read this. It's alarm bells are ringing loudly in electricity markets for Illinois' clean energy law. And it goes into that auction that I mentioned that covers June through May of 2028 through 2029. And what people don't realize is just how bad this problem actually is. There are price caps in the market which are shielding consumers a bit from the actual problem here. If that wasn't the case, the price per megawatt day would be over double what we're seeing at peak rates right now. So we are being shielded from how bad this problem actually is, which of course is a good thing, but I look at how bad the problem actually is and how that's going to impact us down the line if we don't get our act together and resolve this problem. We've got to move faster at building nuclear plants in this state. I know that Pritzker did put out something that said he wanted to streamline that process, and he's actively working supposedly to streamline that process. From what I've heard from lawmakers who focus on nuclear, it's not being done anywhere near fast enough. And frankly, there's a lot of those providers and energy people who would build those plants who aren't really looking to Illinois because Illinois has not proven to be a good partner to energy providers and a stable partner when it comes to energy providing in this state, energy generation in this state. And so there's a lot that needs to be done to get nuclear built in this state. But even then, that's got an incredibly long timeline. I think it's 8 years to actually put up a nuclear plant. We're gonna be paying a lot in our energy bills over the next 8 years. If that's the only thing we do. So we've got to address it in another way. We've got to keep getting clean energy on the grid. But while that's being done, we can't be closing cleaner fossil fuel, which are natural gas plants. This transition from coal and other dirty sources to natural gas was a tremendous improvement when it comes to being environmentally friendly, when it comes to this transition to our green energy future. We always knew natural gas would be a stepping stone, but eliminating it artificially too fast, just to be able to pat yourself on the back is not the right call, because as I've pointed out many times, and as the Trib pointed out in this op-ed, it's not an op-ed, it's an editorial, when you do that, we then have to import our energy from other states. And we are often importing that energy, not from states that are producing it from natural gas, but from states who are producing it via coal. So we're closing natural gas plants and then importing energy from coal plants. This is why I caution people to actually think about the policies. Don't just do the thing that sounds good in a TV ad and makes you feel good. Yes, we all want to stop burning fossil fuels. I get the point, and I want to get there as quick as we can. But when you do it in an unsmart way, which is frankly what Illinois has done, you're actually hurting the environment. You're not helping. And I'm not interested in feeling good. I'm interested in actually creating a world where we can let me say this better, all right? Because we try to do shorts, and I want to be better at having shorts instead of 2-minute shorts, which aren't actually shorts. So let's start this over. I'm not interested in passing laws that make me feel better about myself or make us feel like we've done something good. I want to pass laws that actually do something good. I want my little boy to grow up in a world where it's got all the benefits that we had growing up and that our parents had growing up. But when you look at the environmental challenges that we are passing down to future generations, Illinois is now, this year, we're the #1 state for tornadoes in the entire country. I mean, Tornado Alley literally has shifted, literally has moved. We're dealing with wildfire smoke from Canada over the last few years. That was never a problem before. The climate is clearly changing. We have got to do a better job protecting this amazing gift that we've been given, this planet. I've got a 2-year-old boy. I've got a child on the way. I want them to have this beautiful earth to be able to grow up in. That will only happen if we make smarter decisions. So I'm not interested in feeling like we've improved the problem. I want to actually improve the problem. And guess what? I'm one of the few that's going to tell you the truth. Natural gas must be a part of that solution. It must be a stepping stone, especially when we have demand increasing with AI and other high-tech needs. We're trying to build quantum in this state. That's going to be a high energy requirement. We're trying to be a high-tech medical corridor or medical producer and have a high-tech medical corridor. That's going to require higher energy use. We've got to be smart about this. If we're going to rely on technologies and businesses and research that's going to require energy, then we should be supplying that energy and building those energy generators. It's common sense. But instead, we would rather pat ourselves on the back and not solve the problem. So there's another rant for you today on energy. We'll be talking a lot more about energy in future weeks. Brookdale, I'm not sure when you say the union, there's a lot of unions in Illinois, so you got to clarify your question there. I'm happy to address it, just not really following what you're talking about. I want to go over to, I made a few posts on my socials last week, and I actually have a few more planned for later this week because Carolyn and I, on our podcast, we talked about this, that we are moving very quickly into a future that is based on change. And I don't know that people are ready for this. As we barrel towards our AI-generated future, not generated future, it's a horrible way to word that. If you're the Darren Bailey campaign, it is the AI-generated future. Sheesh. Apparently I'm tired just like all the rest of you. As we barrel into the AI-driven future, because that's, like it or not, that's where we're headed. Technologies are changing and entire sectors of our economy are going to change. There are whole segments of our workforce of labor who are going to be downsized or out of jobs. And we can put our head in the sand and pretend like it's not going to happen. But those are people, those are families who will be without work, without a way to put food on the table for an extended period of time. And we should be thinking about it now. One of the reasons why I have stepped up to run is we need leaders who are willing to think differently. We need leaders who are willing to look to the future. Too often we have politicians, we have candidates, we have elected officials who are going to just tinker at the margins because that's the only safe thing you can do to try to change things while still getting reelected. Carolyn and I are absolutely happy and willing to sacrifice any future elections, any future ambition of which we have none, in order to actually solve the problems that Illinois faces. And Illinois government is still being run on tablets, stone tablets, not computer tablets, stone tablets. This is where we're at, where we're still using 1980s, 1990s technology. And we are on the precipice of massive changes in the economy, in government, in working and jobs and what our future looks like. We've got to be looking at that. And so one of the reasons why, even though I am often humbled by the idea that I am running for governor, that idea multiple times a day humbles me because I recognize how huge of a responsibility that is. And I take that seriously. One of the reasons why I feel like I'm ready to meet that moment, why I am the right person for the job, is because I've often been looked to, whether it's in business, in politics, in government. I've been looked to solve the big problems. I've been the guy that's been brought in to say, listen, this is how we've always done it, but how we've always done it isn't working. Because I have a unique way of looking at things where I identify the challenges, I pull together all the data, I bring experts around the table, we identify what assets we have, what challenges we have, we do the whole SWOT analysis and see what our strengths and weaknesses are, and then we chart a path forward that may or may not align with how things have been done before. I don't care how things have been done before. I care how things need to be done moving forward into the future. And while that may sound basic, I've learned it's a skill set that doesn't really exist very much out in the world. There are very few risk takers, entrepreneurs like me, people who are disruptors, people who are willing to look at a segment of the economy, at a sector of the economy, an industry, a government agency, and say, with respect to what's happened before, let's bring everyone with experience around the table. Tell me what's worked. Tell me what hasn't worked. What are the challenges? And then let's structure this for how it ought to look in the future. That's the kind of leader we need moving forward, because we are moving into frankly, a very scary world, one full of potential, but also one full of danger and concern. There's a reason why people are very nervous for what the world's going to look like in a couple of years, let alone 10, 20, 30, 40 years. These are the conversations we ought to be having right now. I'm sick of a government that's reactive, that says, oh, well, we couldn't have anticipated this problem. Let's go back to energy. Pritzker and many of the people around him, and even some of the media has said, well, he couldn't have predicted that we were going to need more energy. It's like, really? And I know many of my clients and many of the people I've worked with have been predicting this going back almost a decade, saying that you cannot reduce our supply because we're going to have more demand needs in the future, especially with data centers and all the technology that's coming down the pipeline. We've been warning this for years. But of course, as government typically works and how J.B. Pritzker typically works, now it's, well, we did what we could with what we knew at the time. Now we know differently, so now we're going to change. No, man, you got to actually look to the future. You don't get a pass just because you were unwilling or unable to look past your nose and see how the decisions you make today might impact the world tomorrow. That's the job of leadership. The job of leaders is to look to the future and see how your policies might impact people next year, next decade. That's what good leaders do. So I'm sick of the excuses. And in a race like this, where you have two older gentlemen who are running, I'm the only one who's a millennial in this race. I'm the only one who's grown up with technology. I've grown up with computers. I've grown up with now dealing with AI on a regular basis, both the good and the bad. I'm going to bring a different type of leadership to this role than Pritzker or Bailey ever could. And that's one of the main reasons why I feel confident stepping up and saying, yes, I am the right person for this job. I recognize how crazy that thought is as a 40-year-old, still young-ish person. As somebody who I'm going to learn a lot in the coming decades. I'm going to grow a lot in the coming decades, and I'm eager for that growth. But when those challenges come, you're going to want somebody at the till, with their hand on the till, with their hand on the wheel, who actually has some idea how these technologies work, who actually isn't stuck in the way things have always been done. Because the world's going to look a heck of a lot different in the coming years, and we got to be ready for that. All right, 7:57. I've got limited time left. Let me look to see if there's anything else people want to cover. What color folder did you use for math as a kid? Yellow. Yellow was my color for math. Let's see. Yellow was math. Red was English. Green was history and civics. Blue was science. And then purple was everything else. What else we had under purple? I don't know. Anyways, that's a fun question. I like when we get personal fun questions instead of having it be 60 minutes of me droning on policy. All right, what else we got here? Oh, your comment, Brookdale, was to Jay Lopez. Cool. Yeah, Mark, data centers. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about data centers soon. I can promise you that. So I'm going to save that for here coming weeks, because we're going to have a lot of in-depth conversations about data centers. I'll simply share this when it comes to data centers. There is a common sense path forward that protects people while not holding our economy back. I've had a number of conversations. I talked with an expert just today for an hour, and they were filling me in on some of the things that ought to be done here that aren't being done. And I'm excited to share that with you. But it's 7:59, and I want to keep this to an hour, so we're going to save that for a future conversation. All right, let me close this. How's Abby holding up? Let's close with that one. Brookdale, thank you. I like that. My amazing wife, for those who don't know, is pregnant with our second child. She's also being a trooper and stepping up to watch our first child while I campaign and while I help her as much as I can. Like today, she wasn't feeling very well last night and wasn't feeling well this morning. She has an ostomy and she had a blockage, which for anybody who deals with ostomies knows how incredibly painful that is. So Abby, I know you're watching. I love you. And I'm glad you're recovering from that, but she was exhausted. So I had a small break between interviews and phone calls and meetings. So I took Teddy off her hands. And of course, Teddy wanted to play out in the water. We got him this cute shark splash pad. So I set it up for him. And of course, immediately he wanted to play with Dada. And then he grabbed the hose and he soaked Dada. So then I had to run in and take a shower before my next meeting. But I love my family. It's what keeps me going and reminds me why I'm doing this. But as an answer to the question, Abby's it's been tough for her lately. So any thoughts and prayers you want to send her way, I know she could use it. We've got some family and friends who are being extremely helpful for Abby as she has to bear so much of the burden of this. I mean, people don't realize when you run for office just how difficult that is for the spouse. It's not just exhausting as they have to take up more of a share of family and taking care of the house, but also just mentally. You know, I've been dealing with politics for 20 years. For those trolls who go after me, honestly, it doesn't really get to me, but it can sometimes get to family, which I absolutely hate. So for those who can send Abby some positive vibes, or maybe connect with her on social media and give her some positive comments to help drown out those negative comments and those trolls, I'm sure she wouldn't mind that. It would really help her. On my end, actually, I kind of think the trolls are funny, so I don't mind the trolls. I just ask them to maybe give a little creativity for once. It seems like these trolls have gotten pretty lazy lately. Give me something fun. Make it interesting. Stop doing the same old. Anyways, we're going to finally close on that. Thank you to those of you who engaged with us. And for all those who are going to watch this afterwards, if you've got questions that you'd like to have answered on one of these lives, but you're not able to join us or maybe not willing, that's fine. You can always send it in during the week and we'll get to those questions. So you can email them to us. Our email's up on our website, collin4il.com, or just connect with me on my socials and send it to me there and I'll get it to our team and we'll save it for future weeks. Some of the questions I answered today were sent that way over the course of the last week. So we're going to keep doing these lives as we get closer and closer to Labor Day. I'm excited for you all to see the stats jump up and the engagement jump up. But in the meantime, we'll keep talking about the challenges in Illinois. And more importantly, we'll keep talking about the solutions in Illinois because I truly believe our best days are ahead. And when we make some common sense changes and solve some of the problems that we face, our bright future is right there in front of us for our kids, and for our grandkids. And I cannot wait to work together to make that bright future a reality. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.